Some crimes are so heartbreaking or shocking that they change laws, change society, or even earn the label crime of the century. But the stories that made headlines in decades past aren't necessarily remembered today. I'm Amber Hunt, a journalist and author, and in each episode of this show, I'll examine a case that's maybe lesser known today, but was huge when it happened. This is Crimes of the Centuries. It was early that Tuesday morning, April 17th, 2012. People were just getting their coffee. Kathy Swanson was already at work. She'd made a habit lately of settling herself in before Rita Crundwell arrived.
That morning, I went into the mayor's office. I said, "Jim, I can't do this anymore." And he just looked up at me and he said, "Kathy, today's the day."
Swanson could barely breathe when she heard Rita walk down the hall to talk with the mayor. He'd called just a minute earlier with a question about the cost of some promotional DVD and asked if she would drop by his office for a minute. Swanson couldn't watch. She couldn't look Crundwell in the eye because she was too afraid she'd give it all away. All that work, all that waiting, it had taken a toll. Crundwell noticed nothing unusual. She and Mayor Burke had worked together at the Dixon City Hall for years now, and the request was nothing special. He would ask something about an expense, and she would clear it up. Because Rita knew everything about every dime that came into the city and every dime that went out. She had been doing this for so long that no one questioned her expertise. She understood how the system worked. She knew when the city's coffers were low, which payments could be delayed and which could not. There was no real system for such things. She was the system. It was a small town, and the office that housed workers was equally small. Swanson could hear what was happening down the hall. The mayor had greeted Rita by saying, "These men have a few questions for you." Rita said, "Okay." And then the mayor closed the door behind him, leaving Rita alone with the men. Not much later, Swanson heard the small group of men, maybe it was 3 or 4, open the door. Swanson closed her eyes and listened for the one sound she had waited 6 months to hear. It was the sound of handcuffs being clicked around Rita's wrists. Swanson and the rest of those who were now carrying on with their workday at the small-town Illinois City Hall watched as Rita was led to a waiting car, placed in the back seat, and driven away. Then about a dozen FBI agents swarmed in to take away every file, invoice, report, receipt, and bank statement that had been touched by City Treasurer and Comptroller Rita Crundwell. The first day was chaos. Rumors swirled that Rita had embezzled some of the town's money. The FBI would soon clarify that it wasn't just some money. It was likely more than $30 million. Shockingly, that number would prove to be generously low. When all was said and done, Rita had dipped into her neighbors' wallets 179 times and taken exactly $53,740,394. Rita Crundwell had single-handedly engineered the largest municipal fraud in American history from the very city she had lived in for all her 59 years. Crimes of the Centuries is sponsored by Quince. So I've been thinking a lot about holiday gifts lately, and specifically gifts people actually use.
As opposed to the ones that get politely thanked for and then quietly retired to the closet?
Exactly, which is why I keep coming back to Quince bedding. This is the kind of gift that immediately upgrades someone's everyday life.
Their sheets are incredibly soft. They're made from premium materials like European flax linen and organic cotton, and you can feel the quality right away.
And they're naturally temperature regulating, which is huge this time of year.
The quilts, comforters, and duvet inserts are great too. Warm, well made, and they actually look elevated on the bed. Nothing flimsy or disposable about
What
them.
really impressed me is that Quince bedding rivals luxury brands that cost 2 or 3 times as much.
Because Quince partners directly with trusted factories and cuts out the middleman, you're getting the same craftsmanship without the markup.
So if you're shopping for someone who's hard to buy for or just want to give something that feels thoughtful and practical, this is a really good option.
Give a gift they'll actually use and love with Quince. Go to quince.com/centuries for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/centuries. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/centuries. The biggest question after Rita Crundwell's arrest, and there were many, was why no one noticed that much money was missing. I mean, it was a small town with a population of about 15,000. The budget, which averaged $6 to $8 million a year, was not so large as to be unwieldy. Even New York or LA would consider $54 million a lot of money to simply vanish. The second biggest question was why no one questioned where Rita's very obvious wealth came from, because she didn't hide it. I mean, sure, she had horses and she was successful at showing them, which indicated a considerable income. The other questions were how she did what she did and why. Sentimentalists like Kathy Swanson would ask how she could live with herself knowing the harm she was doing. Cynics, on the other hand, wanted to know how long this would have continued if not for Kathy Swanson and for the incredible hubris of Rita Crundwell. Let's start there. Rita was the daughter of farmers who lived in Dixon, 2 hours west of Chicago in the upper quarter of Illinois. Dixon is famous for being the boyhood home of Ronald Reagan. A statue of the man, youthful, ripped, and on horseback, sits at the edge of the city's River Park. It's also the place where Hollywood gossip columnist Luella Parsons got her start, and where drugstore founder Charles Walgreen grew up and first apprenticed in D.S. Horton's pharmacy. According to the census, in 2000, the median income was around $35,000. It's still so Midwest and Middle America that it gives truth and form to the wholesome cliché. The people there are proud of the town and its heritage. Old storefronts still dot Main Street. The Rock River, which once provided the town with shipping traffic and fresh clams, runs through it, watching as it morphed into a town that manufactured cement and auto parts. It still boasts a fair amount of agricultural work. Outside of town is a medium-security state prison housing 2,500 men. Its official nickname is Petunia City, something the Illinois legislature codified as the Petunia capital of Illinois in 1999. Its Petunia Festival is an annual event in summer, which is presided over by a teenaged Petunia queen who rides a Petunia festooned float that glides on city streets between St. Mary's Catholic School and Dixon High School. Here's festival goer Quinn Staples bragging on it.
It's just the one time a year where everyone's home. You know, I got a lot of friends that left for college and came back. It's a place where strangers become friends. And I don't know, what is it not? You know, it's everything to me.
That festival is rivaled only by the city playing host to the King Cat Tournament, a fishing contest that is befitting the city's other nickname, the catfish capital of Illinois. Crundwell was born there and grew up first showing cattle, then horses at the local and state fairs that were the highlight of rural upbringing in the 50s and 60s. Rita's mother, Carolyn Humphrey, also showed the family's quarter horses. Now, quarter horses, for the uninitiated, are favored for ranch work. They can run up to 44 miles per hour, though they're built for short distances. And they can outrun even thoroughbreds in the quarter mile, though thoroughbreds, the breed that runs in the Triple Crown races you're probably familiar with, can easily outrun them in lengthier stretches. Both breeds are beautiful and expensive to maintain. Rita's high school yearbook gives a brief glance into her teenage life. She wore octagonal glasses, her long brown hair framing her face, very 1970s. She was on the Dixon High School homecoming court, but she was not crown queen. She was president of the Office Occupations Club. Here's Jim Dixon, a descendant of the city's founder, talking to Lacey Mosley on Hulu's Scam Goddess.
Rita, as a high school student, worked part-time for the city under our work-study program in the school. Her job was to work with the city finance department. She would be their runner while she was in high school. They'd say, Rita, here, take this. And off she'd run and come back. But at the same time, she'd handle some of the books, so she was learning that skill.
When Rita graduated from high school in 1971, she was given a full-time job at City Hall in the finance department. 3 years later, she married Jerry Crundwell. At some point, Rita took up where her mother left off on the quarter horse show circuit. The longtime passion and hobby now began to require some serious investment, a lot of travel, and a lot of hobnobbing to advance. Something Rita must have envied. She was just a small-town cowgirl with a city job. It was a good city job, though. In 1983, 30-year-old Rita was appointed comptroller and treasurer, the overseer of the town's money. Side note, she was considered a hard worker, and no one disputes she earned her salary, which, by the time she was arrested, was about $80,000 a year. 3 years after her initial appointment, Rita and Jerry got divorced. She kept her good-paying job and doubled down on her weekend horse show extravagance. It's hard to know when the idea of shifting some of the city's money to her own secret account occurred to her, but sometime in the early 1990s, she arranged for a relative to collect the town's mail from the post office each day and bring it directly to her. No one thought much of it, even when she was out of town and the mail just accumulated somewhere. Rita has never spoken to the press to try and explain her actions. Her motive was obvious. The horses needed better than she could give them on a city employee's salary, and she aspired to be at the top of the quarter horse world, the most successful of its breeders, the most accomplished, the most sparkly and buffered. There's little question that this was a long con. How long is not really known. The scheme could have been launched while she was still in high school. Those less cynical, who maybe think she meant to pay it back, might assume that first dip into the well in 1991 was a spur-of-the-moment departure from an otherwise straight life. In either case, Rita had landed in the perfect position to start skimming. She knew her job too well. She oversaw every dollar the city collected or spent. If a city department head or an average citizen had a financial question about the city's doings, the common response at City Hall was, ask Rita. Here's Danny Langloss, the city manager who once served as chief of police in Dixon.
So this is the problem. She trained everybody on finance, municipal finance, how things work. She put the sheets together, and she showed them, and she explained them. Government finance is complicated. It is. She got all these different revenue sources, where they come from. And you got your infrastructure and your motor fuel tax, and the Illinois funds, and how they go into this account. Well, who's the one teaching the department heads? She's the only one that knows these level of revenues.
So it came to pass that sometime in 1991, the 38-year-old city treasurer created a city bank account that only she could access, only she could sign for, only she knew about. If anyone, like the bank maybe, asked, she had dubbed it the Reserve Sewer Capital Development Account, or RSCDA. Any correspondence about the account, like bank statements, were sent in care of Rita Crundwell. Here's Ray William Johnson on TikTok, remarking on the cleverness of that.
Even the secret bank account that she funnels all the money into, she names it the Reserve Sewer Capital Development Account, which not only sounds official and boring, it sounds like it's connected to the city's sewer system. And no one's gonna second guess a bank account that holds the money to pay for the city's sewer.
That first year, she moved $181,000 from the city's legit capital development account into the RSCDA. FYI, the Capital Development Fund, the most open-ended of the accounts, was set up to receive funds from any of the other 6 accounts the city had opened at Fifth Third Bank. And when Rita began moving the money around, the city regularly had surplus cash at the end of reporting periods, much like the similarly sized cities nearby in the state. But soon enough, Rita was warning Dixon City Council members, the mayor, department heads, and city employees that they were going to have to tighten their belts to make ends meet. Meanwhile, year by year, Rita built a national reputation in the quarter horse world for being a top breeder, one whose horses consistently won the highest honors.
Now let's congratulate your 2011 World Champion, Good I Will Be, owned and shown by Rita Crundwell of Dixon, Illinois.
She began to build an empire. Where she got the money to do that was an occasional topic of conversation, even among those who worked for her on the ranch. Her hairdresser, Nancy Anderson, said she was told that Rita had an older boyfriend who died, leaving her all his money. Others thought there was some connection to the Campbell Soup Company. Rita told the horse show crowd that she had inherited it from a rich uncle. She kept that story away from Dixon because those people knew she hadn't inherited anything much from her family. Most in town later told reporters they just assumed the horses, the buying and selling, the championship wins, were paying the freight. Now, let me take a moment to talk about horses and money. I mean, yes, these creatures are beautiful. Yes, they can live in the wild without us. But anyone who wants to train or breed them, that is, not just let them hang out in your backyard, needs to know that the most familiar adage in horse circles is true. If you want to be a millionaire in the horse business, you need to start out as a billionaire. Yes, champion horses can make you money, but not many do. Plus, they eat, they age, they get injured. My sister owns and shows horses in Florida. Shout out to Sarah at Ironside Equestrian. And she can attest those horses sometimes have astronomical vet bills. In the case of Rita Crundwell, you need to know that a single champion quality quarter horse can cost between $60,000 and $2 million. The cost is determined by bloodline, show record, by skill in such things as racing or cutting, or by the animal's ability to pass along its genes to produce foals that carry on that speed. You should also know that thoroughbred racehorses of substantial lineage usually cost a few $100,000. Though I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that they regularly go for much more than that. And the most expensive thoroughbred ever sold, his name was Fusaichi Pegasus, went for $70 million. That's because he could make the owner money every time he mounted a quality mare in heat. Stormcat, a famous stallion who lived out his days in Lexington, Kentucky, was paid $500,000 every time he went to the breeding barn during his peak fertility years. At points, he went 3 times a day. So his daily contribution to Overbrook Farm could be $1.5 million. According to Blood Horse magazine, Stormcat impregnated 95 of the 109 mares he covered in the single year of 2005. By the way, you only have to pay the fee if you get a live foal from the mating. I'll do the math for you. Stormcat earned $47.5 million in 2005. He lived to be 30. I digressed, but he was a rare horse, and he was the most expensive category of the most expensive breed. For the most part, horse people don't do it for the money. They do it because they love it. And Rita Crundwell loved it. At the time of her arrest in 2012, she had 400 horses. Her feed bills ran as high as $200,000 a month. Was that all coming from horse show prizes? The 2024 American Quarter Horse World Show did award $4.3 million in purse and prizes, but the winnings were widely spread out over different categories in the show, and the amount paid depends largely on sponsors, which can vary year to year. Some shows require entry fees. Some shows offer nominal amounts in cash. Some are so nominal that it's been reported that most of the winners never cash the checks. One source said the average prize for a quarter horse show champion was around $20,000. That would feed Rita's horses for 3 days. Clearly, no one in Dixon was doing the math. Rita Crundwell was buying horses in droves, paying as much as $225,000 for one named Sacred Sierra. She grew accustomed to winning. Here's Shane Grigsby, someone whose family used to show horses alongside Rita.
Rita had so much value in her horses. When Rita showed up with her big fancy rig, she could ask whoever she wanted to move, and you couldn't say no. She did not like to have another horse beat her. She would purchase the horse that beat her if she lost in a class.
She also grew accustomed to jewelry and furs, to multiple houses, to the lavish accoutrement on her luxe RV, granite countertops, 5 TVs, and a satellite dish that she took to horse shows across the country. She had several of those RVs. The last one, an upgrade from her former rolling digs, was built custom and cost $2.1 million. Taking the money from the city must have been like taking pickles out of a jar. The first one was hard, but the pickles get easier to remove each time. In Rita's case, the pickles were just too easy to move, and she never could seem to empty the jar. So, how did her scheme work? Langloss again.
It's crazy because it was really simple, which is why she got along with it for so long. Rita was allowed to open a bank account with one signature in just her name with her as the treasurer. So she developed a scheme as she watched road projects being done around town. She would create fictitious invoices and be writing large sums of money for these projects that we had no responsibility for. And instead of writing it to the state of Illinois treasurer, she wrote it to treasurer, and she was the treasurer. And now, this bank allows you to take several $100,000 payments and put it in this account that only your name's on, that nobody knows exists, and then you can take that and move it to your own account, and that's exactly what she did.
She did this by preparing pretend invoices and writing checks out for the pretend work in case someone asked. They never did. And no one asked why the roads in Dixon had ginormous potholes despite the regular outlay of cash to fix them. After all, this was a place that got considerable ice and snow in the winter. Here's Street Commissioner Jeff Koons talking to CBC Radio's The Fifth Estate host Mark Kelly, explaining how it was not just roads that were suffering.
So how many people do you have working for you now?
6.
But that's gone down over time?
There, at one time, there was 14.
Streets Commissioner Jeff Koons said his trucks were rusting to bits, so he asked Rita for money to replace them.
We never got a truck. The best I could ever get was 4 tires for an inloader. Otherwise, I got no new equipment the whole time she was here. All I got was tires.
Only Rita Crundwell knew that every grand piano, tanning bed, and diamond-encrusted SpongeBob SquarePants pendant she bought was at her neighbor's expense. By 2011, the scheme had worked so well that Rita was taking more and more time off to spend on the road with her horses at shows.
The Oklahoma City Leading Owner Award was no surprise, since Rita Crundwell of Dixon, Illinois, has won the award now for 8 consecutive years. Congratulations, Rita.
1 year early on, she stole $302,368. That was the same year that the city of Dixon's treasurer went to council and had to ask them for and get deep cuts in every department. By 2000, Rita took out $1 million. By 2006, she flew past $4 million. In 2008, she topped that. She filched $5.8 million. A reminder, 2008 was the year the housing crisis caused the stock market to crash, launching the Great Recession. That was the year Rita stole her biggest ever sum.
Meanwhile, this whole time, the city that she works for is running out of money. They're in tons of debt, and they don't have sufficient funds for things like they can't afford to replace broken traffic lights. They can't afford wheelchair ramps. They have to make cuts to the fire department and the police department, and they cut some of the funding for ambulances. You know, shit that people need.
They even slashed the maintenance budget that was used for upkeep of the city cemetery. For the last few years, city pools had been closed for the summer. This, while Rita had helped herself to her own in-ground pool and hot tub at her palatial home just outside of town. As time went by with no more investment in the city itself, roads deteriorated and the downtown grew shabby. There were layoffs. Those employees who stayed, like Kathy Swanson, had their salaries frozen. Later, when the federal prosecutors prepared a case against Crundwell, they had a PowerPoint presentation that outlined her spending for the city and for herself. When revealed, the side-by-side comparisons that the feds produced shocked residents. In 2009, for example, Rita stole $5.5 million. She used most of that to buy a luxe ranch house in Florida, a $258,000 horse trailer, $86,000 on vehicles, one was a convertible, and more than $325,000 on 2 horses. That house was furnished in high cowboy style with antique 6 guns custom made into a dining room chandelier, with every marble surface inscribed with her own special RC monogram. That $2.1 million RV, the one with the king-size beds, 5 TVs, and leather couches, it was bought the same year the Dixon deficit was $1.2 million. The budgetary issues faced by Dixon were reported on by the Sauk Valley News, a small paper that covers the region. When the big headlines in spring 2010 were about their continuing problems, the city manager of Sterling, a nearby town that boasted the same population as Dixon and a similar budget, was prompted to write to Dixon officials. Sure, everyone was facing declining tax revenues, rising healthcare costs, and slow payment from the state, but Scott Schumard told them his city had a surplus of cash and he couldn't quite understand what was going on in Dixon. He wasn't accusing anyone of wrongdoing, he was just perplexed. Maybe they were just making some bad decisions. He said he saw that the city was taking out a $1 million loan using the $850,000 the state owed it as collateral to pay last year's bills and carry the city for the next few months. He asked whether the town treasurer was, quote, really expecting to pay back the loan with future Illinois payments that may not come around for a couple of years or worse, end quote. Schumard was referring to the money the state owed its cities in unpaid tax revenues. Dixon was apparently owed around $1 million. That was a common excuse used by Crundwell when she needed to blame the shortfalls on something specific. The likely connection between Schumard's email and Mayor Burke's next move has never been reported on, but the mayor was prompted to go to outside auditors at some point and ask them to take a look at the books. Because, honestly, only Rita could read the financial statements, he said, and he wanted a second opinion. The outside auditor obliged. Here's Burke talking to CBC about their meeting.
She says, we handle a lot of communities and a lot of county governments, and she said, I'll tell you one thing, there isn't anybody that smarter handles the books any better than Rita Crundwell. So that sent me out the door with my tail between my legs.
Burke figured Dixon was just a city in slow decline. He reassured himself that it was no one's fault. They had, after all, paid out $1 million in auditor's fees over the 20 years that, they would later find out, Rita had been looting the city. None had found a problem with Rita's accounting. All the invoices and all the receipts were accounted for. Crundwell must have gotten complacent. According to the Chicago Tribune, the horsewoman took off as much as 4 months a year. All but a month of that was unpaid to tend to her horse business. In the fall of 2011, Rita headed out for a multi-week horsapalooza. Here's Swanson speaking to Kelly Richmond Pope, Associate Professor of Accounting at DePaul University, who produced the documentary All the Queen's Horses about what happened while Rita was away.
Rita and I worked together from 1991 up until the time she was arrested in 2012. When I first started, my capacity was deputy treasurer under Rita Crundwell. She made it easy to work here. She would always say to me, if ever you make a mistake, don't worry, it can always be corrected. In October of 2011, Rita was out of town, and I needed my bank statements to produce my treasurer's report. In the past, Rita would say to me, now be sure and give them the list over the phone of the statements that you want. I would just run down the list. But that day I was under the gun, I had too much work to do, and I just called and said, I want all of the bank statements. That's when they came. I saw this one account that I had never heard of before. And what I noticed on it was 3 large deposits.
They totaled $765,000. Swanson had never heard of this account.
My initial reaction was that there had to be an explanation for it.
She looked for an explanation, but found none. After a few days, she went to the mayor and explained what she had accidentally uncovered. He listened, then told her to speak to no one about this. No need to alarm anyone, no need to tarnish anyone's reputation. He said he would handle it. He wasted no time. He placed a call to Chicago, to the field office of the only people he could think of who for sure knew something about accounting. He called the FBI. FBI agent Todd Carroll listened as Mayor Burke told him what Kathy Swanson had found. Things moved swiftly, at least at first. Carroll met immediately with Burke and quickly said he needed to talk to the federal prosecutor. They would need to open a grand jury investigation. That part would not be so swift. That would mean that for 6 months, Swanson would talk to the FBI and find out what documents they required. Then she would go into the office early to retrieve them. The FBI would later say that she was not just the whistleblower. She played a significant part in helping them determine which city documents were real and which were handmade by Rita. Swanson admitted to being scared that Rita would find her rummaging through files, or that Rita knew that her demeanor toward her had changed, or that she could no longer pretend it was all business as usual. She would rack her brain. Had she asked Rita about her weekend? Had the horse show gone well? She had to make sure her tone didn't come across as, oh good, you're dining out on my salary. Speaking of dining out, it seems Rita often used the city credit card to pay for steak dinners in town, only to order a few steaks to take home to her dogs. That kind of dug into Swanson's soul. The audacity was too much. Swanson's loved ones, sensing something was amiss, asked her repeatedly if she was okay. She showed extraordinary courage, but it got tricky along the way.
They wanted one of our reports, so I just took it. Well, 2 days later, Rita went looking for it, and I'm thinking, what am I going to tell her? I have to come up with an excuse. And she came up with the excuse for me. She said, oh, wasn't that the one that was incorrect and we sent it back to the accountants to redo it? And I said, you know what? You're right.
The investigation dragged on as the FBI wanted to know if Crundwell had acted alone. Had she loaned money to her family members? What did they know? And they needed to understand the immensity of the crime. When had it even started? During those 6 long months, Swanson watched as Crundwell took another $1.5 million out of Dixon's hands and firmly placed it into her own. The crime of asset misappropriation, which is technically what Rita did, though most of us would call it stealing, is no small problem in all levels of government. The Government Accountability Office took a look at the data for federal government losses between 2018 and 2022 and estimated that $233 billion to $521 billion goes missing every year. Every year. But most of us also pay city and county and state taxes, and a lot of that money is also coming up missing, having gone into something besides bridges and sewers and ambulance service. And while Rita's haul was the largest ever at $54 million, just 3 years earlier, a tax manager for Washington, D.C. issued $48 million in bogus property tax refunds to herself and a few of her closest friends. But not all of these cases involve eye-popping amounts. A quick look at recent cases shows that the amounts can be as small as $5,000 and can involve, as it did in Crystal City, Texas, whole city councils. Still, the true financial scope of the problem for municipal governments is hard to pin down. No comprehensive, up-to-date national statistics could be found. Even when I tried to Google my way to some definitive number, I couldn't find a total. Though, by way of a search engine apology, the research reassured me that, however much it is, the problem is definitely on the rise. According to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, fraud ramps up when safeguards are removed or when controls put in place are stressed due to staffing reductions and workplace disruptions. COVID didn't help with so much remote work being done without much supervisory oversight. It also doesn't help if the theft is long-term because budget shortfalls usually mean layoffs, and layoffs mean fewer people doing more jobs, again with limited supervision. All that equals more theft. ICMA, the world's leading association of professional city and county managers, reports that half of all municipal fraud cases are committed by a long-term and trusted employee. That makes sense, of course, as it takes time and some expertise to know where the loot is and who, if anybody, is watching it. Rita figured because no one had, no one was. That is, until April 17, 2012. Let out of City Hall, Crundwell was taken to nearby Rockford, where she was charged with one count of wire fraud. Special Agent Carroll explained what happened then.
She was given her Miranda rights and asked for if she would like to talk to us, which she did give an interview. It lasted about an hour and a half. During that interview, she was cooperative, but she only thought she'd taken around $10 million.
Crundwell was assigned a public defender who surely must have explained that, if convicted, she could face a maximum penalty of 20 years and a fine that could total, quote, twice the loss or twice the gain, whichever is greater, end quote. The Chicago Tribune opined on Wednesday, the day after her arrest, that, given that definition, the fine in this case would be a lot. On the same day as her arrest, search and seizure warrants were executed at her home and office and at other farms she owned near Dixon and in Beloit, Wisconsin. The feds also seized the contents of the 2 bank accounts she controlled. The federal indictment made clear that the local bank where the account was held had never alerted the mayor or city council of the existence of the secret bank account. On April 18, 2012, she bonded out on her own recognizance in the amount of $4,500. The people of Dixon were appalled, angry, and absolutely sure that they were being portrayed as rubes by the national media. Major Burke and the city council scheduled public meetings that first week, which amounted to a public pillaring of their stewardship. They all sat stone-faced and took it. Every one of them had other jobs, and they had plenty of company. Rita's illegal activity had taken place while 3 different finance commissioners had been in charge, while 5 city councils had served, and while 3 different mayors had presided over the whole mess. Tribune reporters wrote on April 27th that the mandated annual audits done on the city's accounts had not sent up red flags about the alleged transfers of hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time into and out of the account. The day's story goes on to quote David Sinison, a Northern Illinois University accountancy professor and certified fraud examiner, as saying that routine audits aren't really designed to catch fraud. But, he added, quote, there were enough unusual transactions and such lax financial controls that the auditors or elected officials should have noticed something was amiss, end quote. After all, large checks that went through the city's account were simply made out to treasurer. One had even been made out to the AQHA, the American Quarter Horse Association. Clifton Larson Allen and Janus Card Associates, the auditing firms involved, issued press releases saying they were cooperating in the investigation. So did Fifth Third Bank. Otherwise, they all remained mum about their actions. Amid some picketing of City Hall, Mayor Burke announced that Crundwell had been put on unpaid administrative leave. He promised to claw back as much money as he could. On May 2nd, the feds doubled the amount they had originally assumed was stolen. The number jumped because they'd originally assumed the pilfering had started just 6 years earlier and totaled $30 million. But because Crundwell had documented every transaction carefully, and kept a separate set of books in the basement of her home, the full extent of her thieving was made clear. The new total was nearly twice the original and more than 5 times what Rita originally told the feds she had taken. I'm no mathematician, but I can divide 54 million by 15,000 residents, or at least my calculator can. Rita Crundwell had stolen $3,600 from every man, woman, and child in Dixon. When documentarian Kelly Pope got to town, she realized that
there was a shock. A shock was definitely in the air. People just didn't understand. They didn't understand why she did it. They didn't understand how she did it.
Federal agents worked throughout the summer to solidify their case and expand the charges. NBC News anchor Brian Williams included this in his September 13th nightly newscast.
This afternoon in the central Illinois town of Dixon, authorities announced a 60-count indictment against a woman named Rita Crundwell.
This is the same woman who, just a year before, was publicly lauded by a former city commissioner who said Crundwell, quote, looks after every dollar as if it were her own. In most criminal cases, when investigators start seizing assets, you hear about cars, jewelry, houses, maybe a yacht. But in this case, there were horses, hundreds of them. There were legal questions to untangle and liability issues to sort out, but the most immediate concern was simple. What was the federal government supposed to do with 400 horses? After the formal indictment, a temporary restraining order was granted so that the U.S. Marshal Service could be given the responsibility of overseeing their care. Nobody wanted them to starve. It was in everybody's best interest if they could be auctioned off as the well-cared-for, high-value assets they were. On May 7th, Rita Crundwell pleaded not guilty and agreed to participate in the inventorying of her herd, though she was expressly forbidden to sell them or any of her other assets once out on bond. It all would be sold. She did not object. Jason Wadillo, Chief Inspector, U.S. Marshal Service Asset Forfeiture Division, explained to accounting prof. Pope that the circumstances of the case made for an unprecedented effort to recoup some of the city's losses.
In this particular case, there's been an agreement to sell the assets before a guilty plea is entered or a trial for which may or may not result in a conviction. The reason for that is because these are live animals. The horses eat, they breathe, they require daily care, and they're expensive.
But it wasn't just the horses that were going on the auction block. Knowing that the selling off of Crundwell's estate, her farms, her vehicles, her jewelry, and her trophies might draw an international clientele, word went out in mid-July that bids for the $2.1 million RV would be accepted until August 1st, and public viewing of same would be available by appointment. The auction of the rest of her alleged ill-gotten goods was set for mid-September. It was made clear that, if ultimately found innocent of all the charges, the money would be turned over to her, but only after the government recovered its costs. The quarter horse world already knew what Rita had. In that 400-head herd, she possessed 29 champion horses. The non-quarter horse world, meanwhile, marveled at the names of those champions. They were serious salt to the wounds that Dixon felt. Can we get a bid on Have Faith in Money? Or on Money's Moxie? On Money is Hot? On I'm Money Too? On Packin' Jewels? Seriously, horse names are ridiculous anyway. These ones were beyond the pale. An online auction of 80 horses on September 13th netted $1.64 million. One horse went for $226,000, but others for considerably less. The rest were to be auctioned when the remainder of Crundwell's possessions were to go under the gavel on September 23rd and 24th. The feds had expected 1,500 people to show up for the Everything But the 5 Kitchen Sinks auction. 4,000 did, making for quite the carnival atmosphere that weekend. The motorhome went for $800,000. The second batch of horses brought in $5 million. When all the fancy equine doodads and dangling glitter were gone, the total due to the town came to about $8 million. But Dixon wasn't finished trying to right the ship. In July, the city sued their auditors in Lee County Court for professional negligence and negligent misrepresentation. And that September, prosecutors in that county followed suit, charging Rita with making 60 illegal transfers, each carrying a possible 30-year sentence. Maybe the 60 federal counts made an impression, or maybe it was the possibility of an 1,800-year sentence in state prisons. Either way, on Halloween Day 2012, Rita appeared in federal court to plead guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and money laundering. On Valentine's Day 2013, she was sentenced to 19 years, 7 months in federal prison. Inmates must serve a minimum of 85% of their sentences in federal cases, which meant that Rita would have been, at best, 77 when she was released. 2 months later, her horse ranch, her 6-acre farmland, and her home sold for $3 million. A year after she was arrested in the place where she had worked since she was a teenager, Lee County authorities dropped the 60-count case against Rita Crundwell. The state's attorney told the Chicago Tribune that it was just going to be too expensive to prosecute. Things pretty quickly changed in Dixon. The city, thanks to successful settlements with Fifth Third and with the auditing firms, as well as with the proceeds from the federal marshal's auctions, now had about $40 million to spend. Local folks called it Rita money. Mayor Burke again.
We had a couple of suggestions that we should take that money and divide it up among every man, woman, and child in town to get rid of it that way, but the responsible people, they want us to do this wisely.
A new finance director was brought in who created a whole new way to do the city's accounting. Even the form of government changed from the largely outdated council model to a city manager-run government. That new city manager put in fraud protection measures, and the money that comes in is watched by many. There is no single signatory on anything. According to a 2023 Politico story, the town has, quote, smooth streets, renovations at the public library, and, underground, a network of pipe replacements, end quote. And, strangely, maybe, ironically for sure, the town is better off than most Rust Belt small towns. It has, Politico wrote, quote, managed to reinvent itself as an artsy town of thriving small businesses surrounded by farms and state parks, end quote. Even the annual Petunia Festival has more blooms. Many in Dixon thought Rita Crundwell deserved more time than she got. They would be sorely disappointed. She was released on August 4th, 2021, put on home confinement because of the COVID pandemic. She had served 8.5 years. She returned to the Dixon area home of her brother, Richard, who owned an 80-acre farm. She was not allowed to leave the property without express permission from a residential reentry management field office. On December 12, 2024, President Joe Biden commuted her sentence along with 1,498 others on what CBS News called the largest single day of clemency in modern history.
Now, reports suggest that former Dixon Comptroller Rita Crundwell has been released early from the federal corrections.
Biden did this, he said, because those who had been returned to their homes because of COVID successfully had reintegrated into their families and communities. He said they all deserve a second chance. To be clear, Rita was not pardoned. She was just allowed to go live with her brother, who had this lovely exchange with a WGN reporter.
Sorry to bother you, I'm from WGN.
About bad luck.
Why do I have bad luck?
Because you're a beat.
Well, that's not very nice.
What are you doing here?
Well,
I live here. What are you bothering me for? Get your camera off my face, you.
Is Rita staying with you? Or?
Rita who? Who would you like?
Your sister, who wrote in a letter to the judge that she was going to stay with you if she was released.
Do me a favor and kiss my head.
Money buys a lot of horses, but no one's ever said it buys class. By the way, in case you'd written this off as a victimless crime, Mayor Burke died in 2016. While the cause was cancer, a lot of family and friends think Rita Crundwell hastened his death. Kathy Swanson, the hero of our story, retired just after Rita was sentenced. She felt compelled to move out of Dixon. Rita's whereabouts remain undisclosed. To report and write this episode, journalist Amy Wilson read Draining Dixon by the Chicago Tribune. She took in several documentaries on Rita Crundwell's crimes. The most helpful and complete were All the Queen's Horses, written and produced by Kelly Richmond Pope. Amy also owns Thoroughbreds, retired from the track. Crimes of the Centuries is available early and ad-free through Grab Bag Collab. Head to grabbagcollab.com for exclusive content related to this show and access to other series on our profit-sharing network. Unless noted in the citations, this case was researched and written by me, Amber Hunt, and produced by Henry Lavoie. Original music is by Bruce Hunt, Andrew Higley, Henry Lavoie, and sometimes my child, Hunt Van Benscoten. Other music comes from Epidemic Sound. If you like the show, please help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. You can also subscribe to the Crimes of the Centuries YouTube channel at Centuries Pod for video podcasts. Video editing is by Heather Eagle Ears Wilson. For more information or to recommend a case, go to centuriespod.com. On Instagram, we're at centuriespod, or you can find us on the Crimes of the Centuries Facebook page.